What are the compliance and leadership lessons from Episode 1, The Man Trap?
Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
Episode 1, The Man Trap. Air date, September 8th, 1966. Written by George Clayton Thomas, directed by Mark Daniels. The Man Trap was the first aired regular season episode of Star Trek. In this episode, a landing party from the Enterprise beams down to perform an annual checkup of scientist Bob Crater and his wife Nancy Crater, who have been living on planet M113 for 5 years. Without realizing it, each crew member sees a different Nancy Crater. In fact, Nancy's appearance corresponds to each man's fantasy of an extremely attractive woman. Crewman Darnell, for instance, sees a voluptuous blonde he met on Ripley's Pleasure Planet. Bones sees an attractive woman at 25, and Kirk sees an older woman with mature charms. Dr. Crater and Nancy Crater both appear in good health, but Dr. Crater goes out of his way to request an additional supply of salt from the Enterprise's stores. Dr. Crater does the best to get rid of the landing party as quickly as possible. Shortly thereafter, crewman Darnell wanders off after Nancy Crater, but dies under mysterious circumstances. His corpse, when discovered, is found to be covered with a curious red molting. Aboard a plant belonging to the same family as the deadly nightshade and containing an alkaloid poison is found in his mouth. Nancy claims to have seen him eating it, and she tried to stop him. However, Bones knows alkaloid poisoning when he sees it and is immediately convinced that something is amiss. Further tests show that Darnell's body is completely devoid of salt. When an additional landing party beams down, crewmen Sturgeon and Green are killed, and the salt is removed from their bodies. However, Green's body is not discovered, and Nancy Crater uses her shape-shifting trick to assume his form. As Green, she transports aboard the Enterprise with Kirk and Bones, who are the only remaining survivors of the landing party. Green makes his way into Sulu's quarters after observing a lunch tray with a shaker being brought in, but hightails it out when Sulu's pet plant begins shrieking at him. Green transforms into a handsome Swahili man and attempts to seduce Uhura. Fortunately for Uhura, the man's advances are interrupted by passing crew members. Meanwhile, a scan of the planet's surface reveals only a single life form, so Kirk and Spock realize that Nancy must have beamed aboard the Enterprise and start searching for her. While Spock and Kirk are thus engaged, the creature becomes another crew member, then pays a visit to McCoy in the form of Nancy Crater. She puts McCoy to sleep with his own sleeping pills while pretending to help him rest, then assumes his form. In the meantime, Spock and Kirk have beamed down to the planet to question Dr. Crater. Here they discover Green's body. By questioning Dr. Crater, they also learn that Nancy is dead and that her form has been taken over by the last remaining indigenous creature of the planet. As the audience has known for some time, this creature is capable of assuming any form and requires salt to live. Kirk and Spock then beam Dr. Crater aboard the Enterprise, where he immediately recognizes McCoy as one of Nancy's impersonations, but does not reveal him. The creature returns Dr. Crater's loyalty by killing him and then attacks Spock. Fortunately, because of Spock's non-human blood, he survives the attack without major injury. Bones then prevents Kirk from killing the creature and then stands idly by as it begins to drain away the salt from Kirk's body. At this juncture, Spock rushes in and demonstrates to McCoy that the woman attacking Kirk cannot possibly be Nancy Crater by striking her repeatedly and forcefully. Nancy does not even flinch and then sends Spock flying across the room with a single counterblow. When the creature attacks Kirk again, its true alien form is revealed, and Bones kills it with a phaser even after it reverts to Nancy's form. This first episode of Star Trek The Original Series premiered in September of 1966. I find it powerful today for several reasons from the storytelling perspective. First is the colors. For those of you who don't know what it was like in the 60s, the color TVs really emphasized different levels of brightness in a way that's not used as much today. So we had lots of primary colors that were used in backgrounds because color TV was so new.
And it really gets me to think about the visual aspect of your brand and your message. When you communicate to your stakeholders, i.e., your employees, the customers of your compliance program, do you think about the visual message and visual branding? It may be something that you would like to consider. Also, the story itself really emphasizes the anguish of McCoy for a love lost, and what you see down the road is not always the truth of what you remembered. So McCoy sees Nancy as a young woman, not the mature woman that Kirk sees and that she obviously is now. So you need to sometimes check your own filters to see if you are seeing something that you remember or seeing it as it is now. Obviously, it was a great introduction to a new form of science fiction on television, and that really leads me to ask you to consider what is the storytelling you were using in your compliance program. Are you using comedy? Are you using dramatic news? Are you using science fiction? There may be a wide variety of ways that you can tell a story in your compliance program, drawing upon this episode for inspiration. Looking back some 50 plus years later, this episode was a great introduction to Star Trek. Obviously, Star Trek, the original series, and everything that came thereafter. I hope you will rewatch this episode and enjoy it for the storytelling, enjoy it for the colors, enjoy it for its dramatic effects, and think about how you can use the Star Trek genre and the man trap in telling your story of compliance. So what are some of the compliance lessons from this episode of Star Trek? Well, first is the importance of proper verification. In the man trap, the creature's ability to shapeshift and mimic different crew members leads to confusion and anger. This situation underscores the critical need for proper verification processes within any organization to prevent unauthorized access and potential. Organizations must implement robust identity verification and other verifications to engage in appropriate level of data protection. This could include multi-factor authentication, is even up to biometric verification and regular audits of access controls. Proper identification procedures helps protect sensitive information and maintains the integrity of operations. 2. Ethical decision making in crisis situations. Captain Kirk and the crew face dilemmas as they try to protect themselves from the creature while recognizing the need for it to survive. Balancing the safety of the crew with the ethical treatment of a sentient being represents a complex challenge, and compliance programs must include training on ethical decision making, especially in crisis situations. Employees should be prepared to make decisions that balance organizational safety with ethical considerations. Training on this, gaming this out, and providing clear guidelines and a framework for ethical decision making can help employees navigate complex situations. Number 3, vigilance and due diligence. The creature's ability to infiltrate the crew by assuming the appearance of trusted individuals highlights the need for robust due diligence. The crew must be alert to anomalies and conduct a thorough investigation to identify the threat. Due diligence is an essential component of any robust compliance program, and companies must encourage employees to remain vigilant and report suspicious activities or anomalies. Regular audits, risk assessments, and training can help maintain a high level of awareness and readiness to address potential threats. Number 4, communication and reporting. Effective communication among crew members is essential in identifying and addressing the threat posed by the creature. The ability to share information quickly and accurately help the crew to coordinate their efforts and to respond. Organizations need to establish clear communication and reporting mechanisms to ensure that the information about potential compliance issues is shared promptly and accurately. Obviously, whistleblower programs and anonymous reporting channels and regular communication updates can help ensure that compliance-related information flows effectively throughout the organization. Number 5, balancing security and compassion. This is going to be a primary topic and tactic for a compliance professional. In the story, while the primary focus is on neutralizing the threat, the man trap also touches on the need for compassion and understanding of the creature's plight. This balance between security and empathy is a nuanced aspect of ethical behavior. From the compliance perspective, programs must promote a balance between enforcing the rules and demonstrating compassion. Policy should be designed to protect the organization while considering the well-being and fair treatment of all individuals involved. This balance helps to foster a positive organizational culture and enhance overall compliance efforts. In summary, the man trap offers a compelling narrative that underscores the importance of several compliance components. By drawing lessons from this episode, compliance professionals can gain valuable insight into how their strategies impact and ensure companies operate with integrity and ethical rigor. Implementing these lessons can help create a culture of compliance that is proactive, ethical, and responsive to potential risks and challenges.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.